Well, welcome everyone. I'm Steve Savant. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Phoenix, Arizona on KXXT Family Values Radio. And I also want to welcome our online audience on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I want to give a big shout out to Beyond Fear to Freedom, one of the best Christ-centered fellowships that provide a safe and loving community for women in recovery. Just check out their website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. And if you're not doing anything Friday night, you should hop out there. They're 5:30 to 6:15. They have food, fellowship, childcare is provided, and then they split the guys up into one meeting and the gals to the other. If you're not doing anything Friday night, I cannot recommend any outside activity that I'm aware of out in the valley that this could be a big blockbuster change for you. If you're looking for the same thing, and if you hear our guest today and his story, you're just going to say, hey, I need to go out and talk with people who have been there, done that, and have found the answer. Also, if you want to write me, and by the way, I love your email. You guys are great. It's steve@180uturn.com. That's steve@180uturn, YOUTURN.com. And again, keep that theology questions away. I don't want to be talking about doctrine, but I'm anxious. Now, today on 180 and all this week, we're going to be talking to Jesse Dalla. Is it Dalla?
Dalla Riva.
I've done that, and I did that to somebody else with your name. So I did. Dalla Riva,
yep.
Right? Okay. Is it two words, Dalla Riva?
It's two words.
It is two words.
Yep.
Well, I better correct that other person's name. I think I did it in one letter. I want to welcome you to our show. And Jesse, I met you through, actually, your wife, Blake.
Yep.
And if you haven't heard her story, it was awesome. Actually, it was a grief and a glory in the same time. Mm-hmm. And everybody that comes on this show generally has some kind of story, and yours is no exception to the rule. I want to talk about, your early upbringing, and I thought you were Florida, but then I found out you were a Jersey boy.
Yeah, originally.
Yeah, but you weren't there very long, right?
To about 5 years.
Okay, so really you can't get the Jersey culture when you're 5 years of age. But then you moved down to Florida.
Yep.
Now, how do you like Florida when you were down there as a kid?
Yeah, I liked it.
I
like it now, thinking about it.
Just thinking about it, you could go down there again.
Yeah, I like the trees, the grass, the beach, the tropicalness of it.
And no winter.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, I like that part. First of all, coming from Chicago, I'm into no winter. Now, when you're being raised, you have siblings?
I have one sister, one younger sister.
Younger than you.
Yep.
And just like many people that come here, myself true, I have a troubled childhood, and your parents are having problems too, like my parents did. Talk a little bit about how this started to develop between your mom and your dad, because sometimes this is some of the building blocks of how we go south.
Yeah, so when I was growing up, probably when I was 10, 11, 12, my parents were having major marriage problems. And I was getting dragged into the middle of that. Mm-hmm. Both of them had anger problems. I don't know the specifics of what, was going on in terms of how they were feeling and the emotions they were feeling in life, but I know that my dad was not respecting my mom properly, and he ended up cheating on my mom with someone at work. Mm-hmm. And that caused my mother to, really lose her cool, and everything went south in the marriage from that point on. She hired a private detective to investigate him and track him down and gather all this evidence, and I started getting dragged into the middle of it because my parents were so unstable and so angry with each other that they were both telling me things about the bad things that each other were doing, and I started to believe both of them, that they were both these terrible people. My mom would give me too many details on like the adultery my dad was committing on her.
And how old are you at this time?
Yeah, 13,
yeah.
12, not in high school. The beginning of middle school, the end of elementary school, and I shouldn't be learning about these things that young. And so I started to believe both of them, and then my dad would, they would get into huge screaming matches, and he would leave the house, and, I remember me and my sister crying at the door, wanting our dad to come home, and eventually they ended up getting divorced. And it didn't end there with the anger that they had towards each other. There was lots of battles over child support that we were getting dragged in the middle of, and custody issues that we were getting dragged into the middle of. And my dad was with different women, and I didn't really understand what was going on. Now, to give them some credit, they were there, as opposed to some stories I've heard where parents have completely abandoned their children. They had problems, they made poor decisions, but they were there for us. They were still in our lives. They never abandoned us, even though they were divorced and separate. But it was hard to deal with nonetheless, being pulled from one town in Florida to another on weekends with my dad, and then spending the weekdays with my mom, and the back and forth and the drama of the whole thing. And they're both very angry at each other, and they're both talking badly about each other, cussing at each other, telling us how bad each other was. And I started to believe both of them.
I totally get that. I went through that myself. Parents couldn't shut up. They just denigrated themselves in front of myself and my siblings. And finally, in custody court, when the judge asked me who I wanted to go with, I said, I don't want to go with anybody. He says, if you can find somebody to be a sponsor, I'll cut you loose and emancipate you. And this is before I was 18, so I had to get permission to go on my own. I got to tell you, it's bitter, it's hurtful, and I say, and this is just me talking out loud, and if you're hearing this, you're saying, Steve, I went through this, what Jesse just said, what I just said. It has major bearing on our rebellion later on. If you don't think this is connected, you're making a big mistake. I've been in jail and prison for 16 years. This wound is open, it's big, and it happened way too early in a lot of these kids' lives. And for people to be talking about mom and dad and the adultery at 13, it's so inappropriate and off the rails. So I totally get that, Jesse, and I'm so sorry that you had to go through it. Now, one of the things that happens, I don't know, maybe this was your story, I'm just going to start drinking my brains out, right? How was that for you?
I would say the drinking and the smoking marijuana happened a little bit later, but that was the precursor to me feeling bad about myself. I lacked confidence. I didn't think I was cool enough as the other kids. That I was smart enough, that I was capable enough at sports and doing different things. So about when I was a freshman in high school, that's when I started to drink alcohol.
Now, Jesse, you did nothing to cause this divorce, right?
Right.
You had no part and parcel in this, and yet we're taking on negative attributes into our life. And this has nothing to do with it. I had the priest when I was 9 years old. He dragged me in his office to tell me, your dad being in prison isn't your fault. I never thought it was, right? And we have many kids, and I mean many gals I've met out in prison and jail who completely take a burden that has nothing to do with them. And I just want to be able to say, listen, we all have plenty of stuff to own, right? But that's not one of them. And so I'm very bothered by childhood trauma and how it finds its way into high school. Listen, how do we know that we feel inadequate athletically? How do we know we're dumber than dirt? I mean, this all started from divorce. Mom and dad isn't worth, my parents are worth, and when back in my day, I didn't know anybody that was divorced. All my friends, it was like, there was this trauma. And I just say to you that, Jesse, when you come through this, you're starting to dip into all of the things that we're just trying to drown it, whether it's alcohol, I'm blowing weed. I know there's worse stuff out there. I'm trying to keep myself straight because I don't want to go into some kind of crazy addiction like some of my other friends, and I was in the music world and I saw that. So talk to me a little bit about your whole scene about that. So you're in high school now, and your visitation, you're still visiting dad, right, during this time, and you're living with your mom, right? How's your sister going through all this?
I was not a good brother. I'm sure she dealt with, she was much younger than me when the divorce was actually happening, so there's a lot that she didn't experience with that. But I was picking on her a lot because of my own issues and my own unhappiness. And I'm sure that all that combined with the divorce and the different drama that was happening in our household wasn't helpful in her life.
It's crippling to think that we know that she's suffering and we're so disjointed ourselves and disabled, we can't even help.
Right.
Well, talk a little bit about, you get through high school. Thank God, you graduated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you get through high school, and then finally you start. What are you going to do? You're going to go to college?
So in senior year, everything started to collapse for me. I was drinking, I was smoking marijuana before that, but eventually I walked into a gas station one day when I was in high school, and the guy came up to me and he said, "Do you want to buy any blues?" And that's lingo for oxycodone, 30 milligram oxycodone. And I said, "Yeah, I do. I do want to buy it and try some." And I tried it, and
you liked it.
I liked it a lot, and it was a whole new experience, and I became instantly addicted to it. And then my life really started to take a turn.
And
for
you
the
mean
worse.
instantly?
Yeah.
See, this is what everybody says this is a gradual process, but a lot of people, my experience is not so. First time could be the hook time. I don't know until you go through it. When we come back, we're going to continue more with Jesse's story right after these messages. If you're hearing this thing, take heed. If you're hearing this and you're right on the edge of doing something stupid or going into dope or any of the things we're talking about, you could avoid all the trauma and troubles that Jesse and I went through. We'll be right back right after the break. Okay.
You know the road to recovery can be difficult, but you don't have to travel alone. Every Friday night, like-minded people gather together to share in the night and their stories, how they broke the destructive cycles in their lives by the power of God and moved on to a new life in Christ. For more information about
You were a senior.
go out to their website,
A senior.
beyondfreedom.org. If you can't get to BFF on Friday nights, or you don't live in the Phoenix area, you can stay connected by joining BFF's Subscribe Tribe, where you'll receive their weekly study guide, so you can track with them online. Just sign up today on BFF's website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. And don't forget to listen to BFF's weekly video podcast with Debbie G and Sheridan. Their own life experiences and their biblical influence will overhaul your thinking, your identity, and your future. They'll keep you encouraged with some great insight and biblical truth. Just find them on Facebook or go out to their website at beyondfeartofreedom.org. BFF, where you might just discover the best friend forever.
Well, welcome back to 180 with Jesse. We're talking about his story today and all this week. And remember, if you want to watch this a week later after we broadcast on KXXT, we put it out online. So you could see it on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever you want to do. You can watch the whole thing, see what we look like. Not that it's any that we're camera ready, but whatever. And you can just enjoy that time. And I just want to just give an idea that if you come in and you watch these shows and you're out of sequence, you can go back out on YouTube, because I always post them in sequence, because you don't want to get out of place. You can watch this in chronology. I think watching them in order really helps your understanding of what's going on. Okay, well, we're talking, Jesse, when we're talking about being introduced to Oxycodone, that was not my drugs during the daytime. Everybody's, I'm playing in bands and people are offering me Valium. And the first thing I thought was, hey, I do not want to be a downer. I don't want to do downer. I'm a happy guy, right? I'm not sad about stuff. I just want my music to take me where. But what does this do for you?
It gave me courage and confidence, and it made me feel good about myself, because I had this euphoric feeling that took me out of the reality I was experiencing, which was one of depression and anxiety, and it put me in a different reality where I experienced euphoria, courage, a newfound feeling of power. But that was a trap. That was a trick.
That's the trap. It's fraudulent.
Yeah.
I have to say, people are looking for courage, and I'm not going to be able to find it in a pharmaceutical, legal or otherwise. And I've said this many times in this show. Just check it out. I'm just saying this for people, and I get a lot of traffic on this statement. The Greek word for sorcery in the New Testament is called pharmakos, or pharmakia. And that's our word that we translate, of course, into our English as pharmacy or drugs and so forth. But its root word was applied to sorcery. When you're into dope at this, and this is the front end of terrible other things that Jesse's going to get involved in, but this stuff is dangerous, and you can get hooked day one. Everybody says, oh, that's impossible. That never happens. Well, it does happen all the time. So when this happened to you, you don't realize anything but the benefits. You don't see the entrapment yet.
Right.
So talk a little bit about how far this went.
Yeah, so I was using it and I loved it, and I thought, man, why didn't I know about this earlier? Then one day I didn't have any, and man, I felt like I thought I had the flu, and I was so sick, and I couldn't get up out of bed, and I couldn't go to school, and I felt just unimaginable pain. And then I got some more Oxycodone, and it all went away, completely went away, all the pain I was experiencing. And then I realized, after researching it on the internet, that was the withdrawal symptom of the pain pills. And then the slippery slope began of me having to get these drugs to not feel sick, and that's what began to motivate me to use these.
It's so funny. The psychological issues get solved up front with Oxy. It gets solved up front. But the human physiology issues are now developing a dependence, and even if you want to walk from it, it's not easy to walk from.
Yep.
That which used to make you feel good in your head is now, when you get off it, or you're trying to, you didn't realize what happened because you missed your distribution on it that day or week or whatever it was, then all of a sudden it's just banging you on your body.
Yeah, it was. I ended up stealing prescription pain pills from my dad, from my mom, anywhere I could get them, and then it turned into stealing, money from my mom and dad to buy more, making all sorts of arrangements at all hours of the night with stolen money and stolen goods to buy these little pills that, made me not sick, essentially. And it became so voracious that stealing evolved into stealing from friends. I was in a relationship at the time, stealing from her family and her, all sorts of people that trusted me. I betrayed them.
It didn't matter if they showed you love and affection, you just need the money.
Nope. I had good friends that had never betrayed me or done anything bad to me, that I ended up stealing from them.
Now, before you got into this, you think you were a pretty square, moral guy?
Yeah, I felt like I had, a good moral compass. Stealing's wrong. Doing the honorable thing is right. Loyalty is important. But that all my ideology changed when I began using drugs and drinking alcohol. My ideology changed from that into being a thug, a gangster, doing drugs, getting high, stealing, was the good thing, was the honorable thing, was something to be valued in life, and that didn't lead me to good places.
I think about this question I always offer in prison, where it says, if you knew something to be true, but it's not, when would you want to know about it? Could anybody talk to you back then on any of this?
No. People tried to talk to me. And my mom had people come down, people from that had been through all sorts of terrible things, come down and talk to me. And I was just an arrogant 17, 18-year-old, didn't want to hear anything they had to say.
So you couldn't envision, hey, this could be me in 10 years.
No, I couldn't see it. I was blinded by my youth.
I have to say, everybody's always asked me, Steve, how is it in death row? I can do death row all day long. Maximum security. I'm there with maximum security. What's the worst place to go? It's sexual offenders. No, it's not sexual offender yard. It's youth detention. You cannot tell anybody anything. Is that not so?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I can bring in the worst drug-addicted people with tracks up and down their arms, into their armpits, up their legs. Nobody cares. When you're under 18, nobody can speak to you.
Right. Right.
Did you find, was that you?
Yep. I couldn't. No one was able to tell me. I didn't believe them. I thought it wouldn't be me. I just rejected it outright that could ever happen to me. Because I hadn't experienced what they experienced. I didn't look like like how they looked, and I just rejected that would happen to me. But that's what ended up happening.
It's funny how we can change our complete moral compass, and it can be pointing 180 degrees, not true north, but south, and that's where my rebellion's going to go. Now, Oxy isn't going to stick with you for the rest of your life because it's not the kind of drug that if you're going to be a thug. As I remember when we were younger, everybody came to people like myself and says, hey, what are you doing? So, you're doing that sissy stuff? Valium, weed, whatever. You're doing that sissy stuff. No. You guys got to start doing angel dust. You got to start doing crack. You get all these other things they're introducing into our lives, right? LSD, especially in my era, right? Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden we're being put down for the drugs we are doing because it's low life. It's sissy stuff. Have you ever, if you're going to be a thug, you can't just stay on Oxy.
Right. So, yeah, and I did move on from it. I ended up getting addicted to heroin and methamphetamine.
Well, which one first?
Heroin first.
And smoking it or shooting it?
No, I was smoking Oxycodone, and then I went straight to shooting heroin.
Did that bother you? There's a bridge here. You just crossed over. You just made a quantum leap, right? This wasn't a gradual move.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
It bothered me prior to me doing it. Mm-hmm. Let me put it like that.
What was the tipping point then? What happened that night?
I was at a halfway house, and that's all that was available. And I had never done heroin before, and the people that were there were shooting heroin.
In a halfway house, actually prescribed as a place for people to get fixed.
Correct, yes.
They're getting a fix, they're not getting fixed.
Yeah,
How many, it's my experience, and remember, I can only tell you Phoenix, but I have not seen too many halfway houses that are very redemptive.
Right.
Would you concur?
I'd agree. There's a lot of halfway houses that are mismanaged. Mm-hmm. They're managed by people that don't know how to employ strong boundaries and have strict rules to prevent things like that from happening.
I find it interesting that God invents the 10 Commandments, which are guardrails for our life, to keep you from crashing off the highway, right, down the gutter into the ditch. And we need, if that's what I'm hearing from you, we need strong guardrails. And without them, even during rehab, if we don't have them, it's ridiculous to go through it.
Yep.
Would you agree with that?
Yep. Okay,
so the first night you moved up. You were smoking Oxy. Now you're going to go right into shooting, which surprises me. A lot of guys go from smoking Oxy to smoking heroin before they ever shoot it.
Right. I don't even think I knew it could be smoked because it was the first time I ever had seen it or done it. Mm-hmm. I had never seen it before.
You never heard the horror stories of dirty needles?
Nope.
You never heard the horror story of addiction?
Yeah, I was addicted already.
Did you see the arms on these people?
No, I hadn't really experienced any education related to like how IV use was more detrimental than smoking it or snorting it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the reasons that some people go down that road to try their best to stay with. They want the results, but they don't want the IV use.
Right. I had always judged people that had because you could shoot Oxycodone too, and I had always judged those people as, man, that's taking it too far. Mm-hmm. That's too extreme. You're a junkie for doing that. Mm-hmm. But that's what I ended up doing.
I always find it funny how we can be accusatory, sitting back, right, doing something bad, but not as bad.
Yeah.
You're going compare, contrast, right, of everybody's life. I think this is an issue, and I just want to bring it up again, because we're going to, all this week, we're going to be talking about Jesse's story. You could benefit from hearing this story. Listen, remember, if you're not doing anything Friday night, beyondfeartofreedom.org, all the information's out there on their meeting. Starts 5:30 to 6:15. Food fellowship, child care is provided. Great ministry for men and for women out there. I highly, highly recommend that you take a trip out there and see if the Lord will speak to you. Well, listen, for more information, just go out to Beyond Fear to Freedom. And remember, I'm Steve Savant. No one's outside the reach of God. No, not one.